anywhere, anytime, anywhere. I happened to be in Israel when there was an intifada. So what happened, well, there is an intifada, there is an armed uprising, terror attack, anywhere, anytime, you don't know when it's coming from. So you're walking around with terror. I happened to be with my children. I wasn't living in Israel at the time, but I'm from Israel, and I went to visit home, and I was with 3 of my children. And it was constantly avoiding public places. It was looking around constantly and seeing if there is someone who looks different from what they need to be. Is this big woman who is an Arab, is she a really big woman who is an Arab? Or does she have something underneath her big dress? So even someone who is very much like what Avi said, very pro-Palestinian, right? I'm pro-Palestinian. I want the Palestinians to live with peace and dignity and raise their children. So even someone like me who would want to embrace that individual and speak with her and talk to her and, our shared humanity and be in any kind of human relationship with anyone, I would have to take 2 steps back because of the fear. There is constant fear. Are they going to come and get you? It is teaching your kids to look around. It is teaching your kid to take their kippah, their cover, because you don't know if you're going in a place that is safe and they can be targeted because they're Jews. So that's what it means, intifada. And I don't have the numbers, but if you would look at of how many buses were blown up and how many Jews, Israelis in Israel were murdered, whether it was by stabbing, whether it was by suicide bombing. And that's what it means to go constantly with fear. And so globalizing it means that I, as a Jew and Israeli, have to be even more scared when I walk in the street, that I will not be wearing any Star of David, that I will cover and hide any identifying symbols that I'm either wearing or saying or talking. I have to think twice when people say, oh, where are you from? I hear an accent. Am I going to tell them who am I really from?
Obviously, there's people that are just anti-Semitic, right? But I think a lot of these people, they want to help, right? They want to do the right thing, and they're just getting fed these lies and this misinformation. And it's really easy to say, oh my God, this is true. I need to support this. I need to help this. And I've given this analogy before, but I think it's very similar to what happened during COVID. And again, there are people that had a blatant disregard for human life, but there were a lot of people that said, they formed their own opinions about masks, about vaccines, and about whether they worked. I think some of them really wanted to help. I think that they just didn't. It was their ignorance that got in the way. They said, I know more than doctors and than scientists. I don't need to fact check this. I can make my own opinions about whether these work or not. I'm reading a tweet or an Instagram post, so, it has to be true. It's not how that works. And especially I think this movement is a lot more organized than that. But I think it stems from the same thing. Especially in a time of crisis, people want to help. And they often rush to form that opinion, and they rush to help. And like I said, it hurts the cause.
The first time I realized that anti-Semitism can be anywhere. Even if you think, I go to this big university, people aren't really concerned with politics here, this isn't really a Virginia Tech thing. It is. It's happening on universities you never expected. People were standing up in front of the Senate and other students. You could tell it was like a football game. You had your pro-Israel students and your pro-Palestine students, and the pro-Israel students were vastly outnumbered. And they went up there and they said what they believed to be true, but it was very hateful. You can't go up to speak to a group of people who are educated, being educated, and say things that are biased and wrong. When you go up and you compare Ben Gurion, Theodore Herzl to Adolf Hitler, that is anti-Semitic. You're rewriting facts, and you are now victim blaming us. They use age-old tropism and blood libels against us, and then get upset when we have our turn to speak. They really tried to push that it isolated us even further, that now any Jewish event, Hillel or Chabad, has to have a police officer there. And then they came to the encampment.